Hello everybody and welcome back to another Pokémon Emerald video. Since last week I used Poliwrath, it seemed only fair to complete the other branch of that evolutionary line, and so today I will be using Politoed to beat Pokémon Emerald. For the rules, I can only use my starter in combat. I cannot use items from my bag in battle, I can't raise my evasion in any way, and I can't use cheats or glitches. Politoed has similar stats and moveset to Poliwrath, but there are a few key differences. The biggest one is that Politoed cannot learn Bulk Up with the TM, so the endgame might be a bit harder for this one. The starting moveset is decent, Water Gun will be very useful, and Double Slap I can use to hit the grass types, like Maze Trico. The only move that is really useless here is Perish Song, because I will be defeated by my own attack. So I will just be ignoring that move slot and act like I only have 3 attacks. Surprisingly, Politoed and also Poliwrath leveled quite fast at the start of the game. With only a few encounters, I was already at level 13 by the time I took on the grunt in the forest. After defeating him, I did a little bit more training against the trainers before the next town, and then faced off against Roxanne. Today she did not have a nice fight, I pretty much just swept through her team. Water Gun is super effective on all of her Pokémons, and even though Nosepass manages to leave one attack, it falls to the following one. Now that we have acquired the first badge of the game, there are a few more things to do around this town, but eventually I can leave. Before I can do so though, we can take on the optional fight against our rival. In this one, May improved her team quite a bit, and both of her Pokémons are resistant to water, and so I used Double Slap to defeat her Pokémons. It took a few turns, since Double Slap is not the greatest of attacks, but eventually I can get through her. Next I went to Brawly. Today I have a special attacker with a decent stab attack, and so it should be fine. I am not strong enough to one-shot his Pokémons, so I have to spend a few more turns fighting them. But that's okay. The only annoying thing is that Meditite used Light Screen, and so now my water guns deal even less damage. That could be problematic for Makuhita, since it takes the time to set up multiple turns, and eventually hits me pretty hard. Fortunately, the light screen eventually ends, and so I can defeat his ace Pokémon before being taken down. From here we can get to Slateport, where we have to fend off against a couple of Team Aqua Grunts and their Pokémons. Their teams are not particularly powerful, but they are quite annoying. Carvanas are resistant to Water Gun, so that move does not deal that much damage, but on the other hand, I did not want to use Double Slap, because I would take multiple rough skin hits, and those can add up. Eventually I can defeat these grunts too and move on with the story, and after grinding a little bit we can take on the next major fight in the game against our rival once again. This is probably the hardest fight against May, because her team is quite strong, at least compared to what you can have at this point. Thankfully, Double Slap is somewhat nice to me and does not miss too often. Also, my quite high special defense allows me to take a few absorbs from Grovyle, and once her ace is defeated, the rest of the team quickly follows. Next, we have to get ready for maybe one of the hardest fights in the game, because Wattson has the type advantage against us. For this fight, I bought the Ice Beam TM because it might be useful against some of his Pokémons. I also used Hypnosis on the Magneton to hopefully not be paralyzed, and while that did not work out too well, I still was able to get through that Pokémon without the status effect. Unfortunately, Manectric leaves an Ice Beam and is able to paralyze me. I was hoping to defeat it fast, but unfortunately Wattson is able to use multiple potions on it, and so the fight drags on. At least I did not get fully paralyzed a lot of times, and so I was still able to get through this gym fight. Now that we have acquired this badge too, we can explore more of the region, and eventually we get to Meterfall Caves. Here we meet Team Magma and Team Aqua, and then we have to rush to the local volcano to try to stop Maxi from activating it. His team is a bit annoying, but since I am using a mostly special attacker today, the Mightyena's Intimidate should not matter too much. I misclicked against Camerupt and accidentally used Ice Beam. That allows his Pokémon to survive an extra turn, but it did not make much of a difference. Once we have saved the region for the first but not last time, we can get to the next gym, and this one is headed by Flannery, the Fire-type specialist. Even though her Pokémon have Sunny Day to lower my water damage, they still have to use it, and by spamming Water Gun before they can move, I can make sure that the damage I can do on them is very high. Unfortunately, Torkoal survives a hit and then uses Attract on me. Then she uses Body Slam and immediately gets a paralysis. I had to sit here a few turns doing nothing, but eventually I can get through the two status effects and finish this fight. Now that we have obtained this badge too, we can backtrack a little bit and reach our dad's gym. Norman is a bit scary. His Pokémon mostly hit on the physical side, and my defense is not that high. Also, my damage output is not that great, and so I cannot one-shot any of his Pokémon, giving them the time to chip me down. At least I have a good amount of HP, so even though I take a few hits, I am able to reach Slacking with a good amount of HP. I still have to face tank a Facade, which deals a lot of damage, but fortunately, by playing my cards right, I can finish this Slacking off without him using a Hyper Potion on it. By completing this gym, we get the badge, but also the Surf HM, which is going to be extremely useful throughout the rest of the game. I immediately teach it to Politoed and use it to reach the other side of the region. Here, eventually, we get to the Weather Institute, where we have to defeat one of the Team Aqua Admirals, but she was a pushover. Not long after that, we also have to face our rival for the last mandatory fight. Unfortunately for her, I now know the Ice Beam TM, and so her starter is no longer a problem. Once we have defeated her here, we can do some stuff with Steven and then enter the gym. Winona should not be too problematic. I have Ice Beam, which is super effective on a lot of her Pokémons, but I don't think it will be able to one-shot everything. The first speed bump is a Pelipper, which stalls me for quite a bit with Protect and also confuses me with Supersonic. I do hit myself a little bit, but the damage is not too high. Usually Skarmory is also annoying, but today I was able to one-shot it with Surf. From there I can use Ice Beam to clean up the rest of her team, and that's another gym defeated. Then I went to the next town over, where we can face off against our rival May for the very last time. Her team pretty much only added Tropius from the last encounter, and so I can just one-shot it with Ice Beam. The other major difference is the addition of Pelipper, which is very annoying, but that Pokémon cannot do too much. As usual, it is good for stalling, but eventually it has to fall. Once we are done with this, we can get to the Pokémon Tower, where we receive the Magma Emblem, and with this key item we can enter the cave where Groudon is sleeping. Here we arrive a bit too late, as we see Maxie using the blue orb to awaken the red Pokémon. That's a genius move. Of course, Groudon runs away, and we are left to fight the Team Magma leader. His Pokémons are not too powerful, but I am surprised to see that Crobat was able to survive an Ice Beam. Even though I got confused, I can lose not that many turns to that status effect and finish off the rest of his Pokémons in no time. Next we have to infiltrate the Team Aqua base, but here we are only able to find one of their admirals. The fight against him is unremarkable, as I can one-shot both of his Pokémons. From here I had to spend a bit of time grinding, because the next fight is going to be against Tate and Liza. This fight should not be too problematic, as I have the type advantage with Surf and Ice Beam, but since it is a 2v1, you never know what's going to happen. Surprisingly, it went very well, as I was able to defeat 3 of their Pokémons in just 2 turns, leaving only Lunaton to be one-shotted by one last Surf. I may have over-prepared for this one. Anyway, next we can get to the other double fight of this island, where we have to help Steven fight off against the leadership of Team Magma. Their Pokémons are the usual ones that we saw in the previous fights, and for this match I decided to just use Surf a bunch of times. Unfortunately, I got confused halfway through the match, which is a bit annoying, as I had to waste a few turns hitting myself, but overall that did not matter too much. Metang was also quite on the offensive mood today, and so it was able to finish off a few Pokémons on his own. Once we both snapped out of confusion, the rest of the fight was very easy, as their Pokémons could not handle all of our attacks. As a gift, Steven gives us the Dive HM, which we have to immediately use to reach the seafloor cave. Here we are met by Archie, the leader of Team Aqua, who wants to fight us to have the opportunity to awaken Kyogre. His team is very similar to what Maxie had, and so it too falls without too many problems. Once again, I was a bit surprised to see one of their Pokémons survive a Surf, but that did not last long. Even though we defeated him here, the red orb activates anyway and wakes up the legendary. Now that both of them are awake, the weather in the region is a mess, as they are clashing with each other. To stop them, we go ask Rayquaza for help, and the third legendary of the trio comes down from the sky, shouts at the other two and makes them stop their fighting. Now that the world is saved, we can resume the badge collection, and it just so happens that Juan is nearby. His team is going to be a bit annoying to deal with. All of his Pokémons are water type, and unfortunately I do not have anything great to deal with them. I did check hidden power this time around, but it was fire, so yeah, very useful. Still, the fight against Juan was going fine. Sure, I had to take a couple of turns to defeat his Pokémons with a secret power, but that was not too bad, until I met Kingdra. This Pokémon is extremely annoying as it sets up multiple double teams and then is very hard to hit that guy. This Pokémon is very annoying as it sets up multiple double teams and then it's almost impossible to hit him. As if that was not enough, it also knows rest to recover all of his HP. At the start I tried to put him to sleep, but that did not work. I also tried to bonk him down with a secret power, but the damage was too low, and so as a last resort I switched to Ice Beam, hoping for a paralysis or something like that. Surprisingly, that attack is a 2-hit, and with a lucky streak of hits I can take down the Kingdra, saving me from an embarrassing loss. Now that all of the badges are in my pocket, I can enter the Victory Road, and here we are soon stopped by our rival Wally. His team is quite nice, but I should be able to deal with it. I start off with a misclick, which allows Altaria to deal a bit of damage to me, but nothing to write home about. From there I paid more attention, and by switching between Surf and Ice Beam properly, I was able to one-shot everything else he had. Gardevoir of course survived a hit, but was unable to do much to me. After clearing the rest of the Victory Road and preparing my moveset a little bit, I went into the league. Here we can start by facing Sidney, who is very in love with status effects and stats lowering moves. To counter that, I used a substitute so that I can ignore all of those attacks. One maybe weird thing I did is switch water pools for Surf. One maybe weird thing that I did is switch out Surf for water pools. That may seem like a bad idea as water pools has less damage, but at least I can overwrite water pools later in the league with another attack. The same I can't do with Surf. Things were going fine until I met Crodant. Unfortunately, I cannot two-shot that Pokémon, and he is able to set up and deal a lot of damage to me. Fortunately, that did not matter too much, as I can still get through the rest of his Pokémons without dying. Moving on, we can challenge Phoebe as the second Elite Four. She is the main reason why I still kept a water attack. I was not sure if I could be able to get through her only with Ice Beam. I worried that I would not have enough PPs even with a Leppa Berry. Water Pulse damage is quite bad, to be honest, as it is unable to one-shot even the Banets, which are somewhat frail. Still, I can keep attacking them behind my substitute. I had to switch to Hypnosis a second to ignore the Grudge, since I did not want to lose all of my PPs, and that allowed her to destroy the substitute. I should have set up another one, but I preferred to keep on attacking to finish the fight faster. That sort of worked, as I am able to defeat the last of her Pokémons not too long after that. For Glacia, I used the Brick Break TM to have a super effective move on her Pokémons, but even if that's the case, Brick Break does not have enough power to one-shot any of her Pokémons. That is quite frustrating, as I was hoping to one-shot them to ignore all of their attacks. With good attack IVs and a nature that increases my attack, I was hoping that was the case, but unfortunately I was wrong. That is a bit problematic, because that means that my substitute is not going to live forever, and I had to reset it a couple of times throughout the fight. Between that and the hail chip damage, my HP was starting to get somewhat low as I was reaching the end of the fight. Still, Wolverine does not have anything super effective, so I should be able to take one attack, and she uses Body Slam, which of course paralyzes me on the first attempt. Fortunately, I do not get fully paralyzed, and so I can finish off Glacia's team. At least Drake should be a bit easier, because I have a super effective move against most of his Pokémons. At the start of the fight, I used a substitute just because I preferred to be safe, but back then I did not think it would be needed. The fight goes fine until I reach Kindra. Unfortunately, Ice Beam is not a two-shot. That is very bad and allows him to heal Kindra back to full HP with a full restore. I was worried to get hit by a powerful Body Slam, but instead it used a Smoke Screen. That's fine as long as I don't miss, and of course I immediately do so and get hit by a crit Earthquake from Flygon. Luck is not on my side. At least I was able to hit an Ice Beam on Salamence and finish the fight. So far, Politoed was very good, but unfortunately, Wallace is where things took a turn for the worse. I'm not sure why, but the fight against him was very hard. I even ran out of PPs in one of the attempts. Eventually I gave up on trying to defeat him at that level and used a bit of rare candies until I reached level 75. That's a decent chunk of extra stats that allow me to two-shot many Pokémons and survive some attacks. Even at this level, things were not super easy. I was able to put the Wailord to sleep and safely set up a substitute. From there I went on the offensive with a return, but since Ludicolo used a few double teams, I was unable to hit him very often, and so he destroyed the sub. That is fine, as I can use another one when Tentacruel tries to toxic me, but unfortunately I cannot one-shot it, so that's another full restore used on his part. Honestly, that is quite good for me, because it would be much worse if he saved them for Milotic. That Pokémon was able to stall me for days in the previous attempts, but in this one I get a very lucky crit to bypass all of that headache. Eventually we get to Gyarados, which is able to destroy the sub with a Hyper Beam, but pays for that with his life. And that's how Politoed became the champion of the Hoenn region. This run started off very well and it was somewhat interesting, until I met Wallace, where things went extremely bad. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe, ring the bell and all of that YouTube stuff. If you have video ideas, feedback, leave them down in the comments. And I'll see you next week. Bye!